Does supporting a piece of art mean you support the person who made it? Is loving something about your best friend enough to support them? They're my best friend. What if that person has done something terrible? What if they did something terrible? Should you separate that person from their work? Should you both not be friends anymore? But he was my best friend. Should that piece of art be celebrated only when that person is dead and gone? Should we just die? Should I just die? Please, forgive. You should just die. Quarantine has made me creatively driven recently. Mixed with the lack of social connections, idling around, and just a lack of pure sunlight, this past year has made me want to make personal projects rather than play video games all day, oddly enough. I've made a pretty subpar Omori animation, started subtitling a pretty niche anime from the 1980s that's still not localized in America, and also added subtitles to a French song that I couldn't find the lyrics for the life of me. All that aside, I think the main reason to jumpstart all this was Omori, a video game made by OMOCAT. It's a game that I've been following for the past several years, and it turned out to be so rich and genuine in mental health representation through its story that it sparked me out of a multi-year long artist block. And I haven't even played it yet myself. I've only watched playthroughs. I also know that the Switch version was just announced, but I'm waiting for that PlayStation release. Let's go! Now I know what you're thinking. Play the game. Yeah, I know I should play the game, and I will. But that shouldn't be enough reason to invalidate how much I feel about this game. It is literally the best story game I've never played. Now, would that have been a better title for this video? Perhaps. But this video is not intended to preach to the choir about how great this game is, but rather to try to convince more people to play this game by addressing what I think is the main reason why people don't want to play it. For those who don't know anything about the game Omori, I highly, highly recommend that you either play the game or watch a playthrough of the game like I did. For those who have heard of Omori but are hesitant or do not want to play Omori because of the content warnings or of the horror aspect of the game, I advise you in any way to try to experience it in an environment that is safe for you. But if you can't, I wholeheartedly thank you for watching up to this point, and I hope you consider returning to the game in the future. I'm probably not even going to explain much about the story in this video, but rather will provide an analysis for the overall game's reception in relationship to the topic I'm about to bring. And now finally, for those who have heard of Omori but are hesitant or refuse to play it because of the controversy surrounding it, strap in because this is for you. The months that followed after the release of Omori on Steam made me want to see this game get its proper recognition. And more or less it did. What with the many unexplained memes of the game popping up here and there on YouTube, which probably got many people annoyed of seeing it for the 1,000th time on their recommendation list.
Stop posting about
Omori.
But in any case, it left me quite sad and disappointed that Omori didn't go beyond that much recognition. I'd say that the amount of recognition it got is akin to the niche YouTube animatic videos of Broadway plays like Heathers or Hamilton. But for the most part, I didn't mind and wasn't very privy as to why Omori didn't get the praise it deserved. After all, it did receive an award from the Dreamies Awards show for Daringly Dramatic, and I was about to have the game just sit as a niche video game. That said, it was very sad that they weren't nominated for the Best Indie Game in the 2021 Video Game Awards. However, after watching this video from GUI, titled Separating OMOCAT from Omori, the circumstances of cancel culture in which this game was buried under really made me want to give my 2 cents. GUI in summary says that there should be a fine line separating an author from their work, in this case OMOCAT from Omori, and I agree. An author's controversial past should not affect the quality of a work they've made. However, it's because of this association with OMOCAT to a game that many notable YouTubers have cancelled their playthrough of Omori under this controversy surrounding OMOCAT. As it turns out, there's a term for GUI's kind of thinking. From a famous French 1960s literary theorist, Roland Barthes coins the term death of the author through a short essay of the same name. At the start of Barthes' essay, his main argument identifies the contemporary problem that attributing an author to their work creates. He writes, "The image of literature to be found in contemporary culture is tyrannically centered on the author, his person, his history, his tastes, his passions. Criticism still consists most of the time in saying that Baudelaire's work is the failure of the man Baudelaire. Van Gogh's work is madness, Tchaikovsky his vice. The explanation of the work is always sought in the man who has produced it, as if through the more or less transparent allegory of fiction, it was always finally the voice of one and the same person, the author, which delivered his confidence. He goes on to explain the battle of many writers with the role of the author in relationship to their work. It is language that speaks, not the author, he writes. In other words, writing should not speak for the author, nor should the author speak for their writing. Writing should speak for itself. The author, when we believe in him or attribute their work with them, is always conceived as the past of his own book. The book and the author take their places of their own accord on the same line, cast as a before and an after. The author is supposed to feed the book, that is, he pre-exists it, thinks, suffers, lives for it. He maintains his work the same relation of antecedents a father maintains with his child. Barthes here explains how a person attributes their creation as an extension of themselves, in the same relationship of the extension of a parent to their child. This is dangerous, because this means that the positive/negative aspects of a child or work of art is by extension the good or evilness of the parent or artist. The tragedy of Frankenstein, for example, is a series of tragic accountability for the monster's actions, or, in other words, guilt towards one's creation. Once the author is discovered, the text is explained, the critic has conquered. Hence, it is scarcely surprising not only that, historically, the reign of the author should also have been that of the critic, but that criticism, even new criticism, should be overthrown along with the author. Thus, literature, it would be better henceforth to say writing, by refusing to assign to the text and to the world as text a secret, that is, an ultimate meaning, liberates an activity which we might call counter-theological, properly revolutionary. For to refuse to arrest meaning is finally to refuse God and his hypostases, reason, science, the law. Here, Barthes is basically saying that the very being of the author explains the entire embodiment of their work, which means that once an author is alleged to doing something, presumably something awful, the work that they've made is the embodiment of the author's actions and is therefore awful in association. And thus, anything or anybody supporting the text despite the pretext of the author's personal values is seen to be going against reason, science, the law, and even God. Now I know what you're now wondering. What did OMOCAT do that could be so horrible that would stop my interest in Omori? Well, I'll tell you, and you won't like it. Not so many months ago, Omori was trending on Twitter because fans of the Minecraft streamer Ranboo, which I think is a nice kind of streamer, viciously was against having Ranboo stream Omori, purely from tweets that OMOCAT made 7 years ago, as well as a shirt that she made, indicating that she supported pedophilia, specifically Shota. And now you're probably thinking, why, video person? Why are you making this video? Are you saying that I should support a closeted child predator's work? I mean, Dewey already said that we should support Omori despite OMOCAT being a piece of shit. And therein lies the problem for me. Because it's that last statement. That last shot at OMOCAT that made me utterly disturbed in the same way when a streamer I've watched playing Omori immediately say, "How do I kill myself?" in the shoes of Sunny after seeing the truth scene. Which I will tell for those who haven't played Omori, I felt that was inherently, yet poignantly the same feeling as a death threat on Twitter. On February 5th, 2009, Elizabeth Gilbert, author of 2006's New York Times bestseller Eat, Pray, Love, alongside many influential people like Bill Gates, went on stage for a TED Talk, expressing her laments and woes of following up from her freakish success of Eat, Pray, Love.
The peculiar thing is that I recently wrote this book, this memoir called Eat, Pray, Love, which decidedly, unlike any of my previous books, went out in the world for some reason and became this big mega sensation, international bestseller thing, the result of which is that everywhere I go now, people treat me like I'm doomed. Seriously, doomed. Like, they come up to me now, like, all worried, and they say, aren't you afraid you're never going to be able to top that? Aren't you afraid you're going to keep writing for your whole life and you're never again going to create a book that anybody in the world cares about at all, ever again? So that's reassuring, you know.
She explains her observation that many writers are given the reputation of being mentally ill, and like Barthes, she expresses the concern as a writer of the modern mentality of attributing works of art to the artists who made them.
The thing that I've been sort of thinking about lately and wondering about lately is why, you know? Is it rational? Is it logical that anybody should be expected to be afraid of the work that they feel they were put on this earth to do, you know? And what is it specifically about creative ventures that seems to make us really nervous about each other's mental health in a way that other careers kind of don't do, you know? And not just writers, but creative people across all genres, it seems, have this reputation for being enormously mentally unstable. And, you know, all you have to do is look at the very grim death count in the 20th century alone of really magnificent creative minds who died young and often at their own hands, you know. And even the ones who didn't literally commit suicide seem to be really undone by their gifts, you know. Norman Mailer, just before he died, last interview, he said, "Every one of my books has killed me a little more." An extraordinary statement to make about your life's work, you know, but we don't even blink when we hear somebody say this because we've heard that kind of stuff for so long, and somehow we've completely internalized and accepted collectively this notion that creativity and suffering are somehow inherently linked, and that artistry, in the end, will always ultimately lead to anguish. So Jesus, what a thought, you know, like that's the kind of thought that could lead a person to start drinking gin at 9 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, I don't want to go there. You know, I would prefer to keep doing this work that I love. And so the question becomes how, you know, and so it seems to me upon a lot of reflection that the way that I have to work now in order to continue writing is that I have to create some sort of protective psychological construct, right? I have to sort of find some way to have a safe distance, you know, between me as I am writing and my very natural anxiety about what the reaction to that writing is going to be from now on.
For the remainder of the TED Talk, Elizabeth Gilbert expresses that for the sanity of both the writer and the readers, both should distance works of art from the artists themselves through a sort of disembodied psychological construct, which the ancient Romans called genius, and which Elizabeth attributes as Dobby the house elf living in the walls giving the writers advice.
The Romans had the same idea, but they called that sort of disembodied creative spirit a genius. Which is great, because the Romans did not actually think that a genius was a particularly clever individual. They believed that a genius was this sort of magical divine entity who was believed to literally live in the walls of an artist's studio, kind of like Dobby, the house elf, and who would come out and sort of invisibly assist the artist with their work and would shape the outcome of that work. So brilliant. There it is, right there, that distance that I'm talking about, that psychological construct to protect you from the results of your work, you know? And everyone knew that this is how it functioned, right? So the ancient artist was protected from certain things like, for example, too much narcissism, right? If your work was brilliant, couldn't take all the credit for it. Everybody knew you had this like disembodied genius who had helped you. If your work bombed, not entirely your fault, you know? Everyone knew your genius was kind of lame. And this is how people thought about creativity in the West for a really long time. And then the Renaissance came and everything changed, and we had this big idea, and the big idea was, let's put the individual human being at the center of the universe, right? Above all gods and mysteries, and there's no more room for like mystical creatures who take dictation from the divine. And it's the beginning of rational humanism, and people started to believe that creativity came completely from the self of the individual. And for the first time in history, you start to hear people referring to this or that artist as being a genius rather than having a genius. And I gotta tell you, I think that was a huge error. You know, I think that allowing somebody, like one mere person, to believe that he or she is like the vessel, you know, like the font and the essence and the source of all divine, creative, unknowable, eternal mystery is just like a smidge too much responsibility to put on one fragile human psyche. It's like asking somebody to swallow the sun. You know, it just completely warps and distorts egos, and it creates all these unmanageable expectations about performance. And I think the pressure of that has been killing off our artists for the last 500 years.
The full video is in the description below, and I really recommend watching this video before I go on. In light of the Video Game Awards' direct message to Blizzard Activision's recent actions is the very concept of authorship, of attributing a great piece of work towards the damning credibility of a single creator, or even an outlying group in a whole studio that destroys and discourages great works like Omori, or even Deltarune and Overwatch to be made and be critically acclaimed for what they were during their time. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Omori got thrown under the bus from being nominated as Best Indie Game in the Video Game Awards due to the controversy surrounding OMOCAT. There's also this preconceived notion that all video games should be pleasantly fun, but that's out of the scope of this video. Now, do I condone what OMOCAT did 7 years ago? No, of course not. However, I should be one to tell you that, guys, I'm 22 years old. I'm always constantly on the brink of saying or doing a hot take as a 22-year-old. I mean, I'm making this video right now, and there's probably going to be a lot of people nitpicking what I say at this moment, but OMOCAT was the same age as me 7 years ago, and this was even before the concept of Omori took place. People have their oddities and odd days, and holding a no-tolerance grudge over a person's single action to the point of sending harassment online is purely presumptuous and something I have zero tolerance for. If we are going by Elizabeth's advice, as having a genius rather than being a genius, OMOCAT's genius probably didn't show up to work that day 7 years ago. But for what it's worth, guys, her genius graced her for the past 6.5 years creating Omori. And that's what matters to me. Now, whether you take the author of Eat, Pray, Love's advice to heart or not, I have to tell you what Omori means to me. As an aspiring game developer, and as a generally creative person, this video game to me is about persevering in the face of what may seem as global condemnation. Sometimes you feel so horrible and wrought with guilt for being yourself, with so many harmful words from others weighing you down so much that you feel like wanting to end it all. Omori reminds that even so, this guilt, all of this, shows that you have good in you. That same good is what makes you cry, and it's reason enough to persevere, because you still wish things for the better. And for what it's worth, OMOCAT and the Omori team, you guys did a fantastic job with this game. Keep hanging on to the good, the bad, the sad, the angry, the happy, the scary, the ugly, yet the beautiful things that still make you, you. And always keep trying to act upon these things for the better. Hey, so that's the end of this video. Hope you like it. I don't know, this is my first time making a video essay. If you want to see Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk, click the top right eye thingy. Or if you want to read The Death of the Author, it's only 6 pages. It'll be down in the description. In fact, both of these are down in the description, but hey, more power to you, I guess. If you want to see more great Omori video game essays, I made a playlist and it'll be on screen and also in the description. But yeah. Anyway, thanks. And goodbye.